Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And welcome to the second installment of Spineless Wonders Writers on Writers mini festival. I'll stop sharing my screen now. So my name is Luca, and I'll be your host for today's session. So just before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm joining from today, so the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I recognise that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are Australia's first storytellers, whose traditions of sharing story, culture, and connection continue to shape us and inspire us today. I also extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us from across many lands and waters of Australia. So if you'd like to, please share in the chat which lands you're joining from. I think it's a lovely way for us to recognise and celebrate the many First Nations places that we're gathering across. All right, so today you're all going to hear about Toupie, which, if you don't already know, is Kathleen Bleakley's newest collection spanning 30 years of poetry, prose, and microlit. We're thrilled today to have Kathleen here with us, along with Peter Frankis, who'll be leading today's discussion. Throughout the discussion, you'll get a bit of an inside look at Kathleen's creative process, the themes behind Toupie, and her reflections on a career that blends imagination, emotion, and experience.
All right, so welcome to unceded Wadi Wadi country in Wollongong, south of Sydney. Before we start, Kathleen and I would like to join with Luca in acknowledging the traditional owners of the countries on which we meet. The Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people are the world's first poets, storytellers, and we wish to acknowledge elders past and present and emerging, and welcome Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today online. This land was never ceded. My name's Peter Frankis, and I'm here today with my friend and fellow creative Kathleen Bleakley to introduce you to her new work, Toupie. Hold it up, Kathleen. There we go. Yes. Okay, good. Thank you, Kathleen. So Kathleen was born in Morocco and has lived and travelled in diverse places. She's been overseas and in Oz, and currently lives and writes in the beautiful Illawarra. She writes poetry and prose, including micro stories and factions. And Toupie is her seventh collection. So welcome, Kathleen. Hi there. And thank you so much for this wonderful collection. It's just great. And it spans, as Luca was saying, it spans 30 years of your creative output. So what was it like encountering and revising these works? And some of this work is quite recent too. So,
thank you, Peter, and thank you, Chico and Luca from what came before. So revisiting these old works, some of them even older than 30 years, fun, nostalgic, going back to the first publication 30 years ago, the second one 21 years ago, satisfying to find that a number of them have stood the proverbial test of time. Really satisfying to be able to revise them one-on-one and to workshop them with Linda Godfrey, who did considerable editing early on in the Toupie manuscript, as well as in various writing groups. And a great opportunity to that pesky bit of punctuation that you wish you'd done differently when you reread your work. Sure. I'll put in a semicolon there, or I'll put in a line break, and you get to do that. And it might seem small, but it can be really satisfying. And it has been fascinating to look at the change in continuity over 30 years.
Yeah, and I guess there's a bit of how you've changed as well as a person and as a poet and a writer.
And not.
And not, yes,
yeah,
indeed. And not.
Paradoxical.
Yes, indeed.
There are two micro stories in there that are so similar, Spanner and Lemonade, in terms of atmosphere, plot, length, and there's about 30 years between them, and it was really unintentional.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, good. So in Toupie we have poetry. Some of it's quite short through to longer prose pieces. So what was it like, was selecting and curating? Because you must have a pile of poetry sort of, and stories, like a phone book. So was curating the collection hard? Was it hard to make those selections?
It was challenging. I was curating from 6 books to date and approaching it in a number of ways, approaching it as the best of those 6 ones, and the bulk is from 4 of the 6. There's a handful from Passion Fruit and Jumping Out of Cars. And then the other aspect is variety, that I like readers to have variety in terms of subject, tone. I was mindful of it not being too heavy in terms of the sadder poems around grief and loss, while honouring that they are the core of the 2 chapbooks, Letters and Two Hearts, Elegies to My Beloved Partner in Life and Art Pling, and to some other family and friends. So I'm wanting variety in terms of style as well as content. And I come back to the importance of an editor as well and helping with that.
Good. All right.
Editors, plural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Lovely. So, well, let's turn then to a little bit to the process of in your writing. And I'm particularly, I mean, you know, as we've said, we've got poetry, we've got short pieces, and we've got some longer pieces, and we've also got something you call factions. So I know what a faction is in the Labor Party, but what is it in your writing?
Yeah, it's a term that I've coined, which is essentially, well, I don't know if I have a patent on it, but it's a hybrid of fact, as in lived experience / memoir, and fiction, imagined, possible, dreamt, and it's taking pieces from both, and also the bowerbird listening to other people's stories and snippets, and those pieces that come together to form, if you like, a mosaic or a pastiche.
A pastiche, yes, yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So just turning a little corner here. So there's a strong persona in all of this, in all of your writing, yet I think you and I know that you reject the label of autobiographical writing. So this is not so this is not autobiographical per se. So can you talk a bit about that sort of, you know, the personal experience versus the persona that you write through?
Sure. I think there's a difference between having autobiographical elements and readers perceiving your work to be autobiography. It's not autobiography. Toupie is not my diary. It's not a journal. There's way more craft in that. They're autobiographical elements, but coming back to the pastiche, they're elements. And to me, it's also really important, you know, the term confessional is one that I'm very unfond of.
Yes.
That the work transcends the autobiographical, that it resonates with readers, that we have human experiences, and our experiences as humans are unique, and yet there are similarities.
Yeah.
And so I'm really satisfied as a writer when readers say, that touched me as a human, or that connected to something that I experienced. So I'm also circumspect about the word universal. It sounds like, you know, we all have.
Yes.
Because we come from different places and culture, and there's a whole lot of elements that influence our experiences. But I do think that there are some fundamental human experiences. And as my friend and fellow writer of poetry and editor Kai says so pithily, that my purpose is to connect with readers. I didn't know until Kai said that so succinctly what my purpose is, but it's to connect. To connect with other humans through writing and reading.
Yeah, that's lovely. Just to extend that a little bit, the other feature of your writing, and we'll come back to this again, is accessibility. So these, as you've said, these aren't particularly easy pieces, and some of them deal with quite hard subjects like sort of grief and loss. You right there? Okay, good. As well as joy and humour, you know, the joy and humour of domestic life. But they're accessible. So can you tell us about what are you trying to achieve with that accessibility?
It's not something that I'm consciously doing, and I know in certain circles accessibility is an unfashionable thing, but I come back to the human connection, that it's a communication. And I would like a broad readership. I'm not writing just for other writers, in particular, not just writing for other poets. And in no way am I dissing that. And I truly value the collegiality and the sense of community with other creative writers. But I'm always really pleased or thrilled to have friends, family, etc., who say, I don't usually like poetry, especially not modern poetry, but I really like yours, or I got it.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
So it's striking the proverbial balance, I think, between writing in ways which uses everyday language but that many people can access, with rich imagery and metaphor and things that surprise. So I'm honouring language and play and experimentation, but I'm also aware that it's a form of communication. And I don't wish people to need to decode every line or need a degree in English, let alone honours, to read my work.
Cool. Great, lovely. Thank you, Kathleen. So we're going to listen to one of your poems, which is called Blue Hawaii. All right. So before we get Luca to play that for us, could you just tell us a little bit about Blue Hawaii and how the poem came about?
Blue Hawaii came from a family wedding in Hawaii, on Kauai, which is the least, as far as I'm aware, of the touristy Hawaiian islands. It had seen its glory days, encountered a more than dilapidated hotel. I'd describe it as a shell of a hotel, was intrigued, heard that the shell came about through a hurricane and a subsequent fire, and also heard what I thought was folklore, that Elvis had part of Blue Hawaii shot at that hotel, Cocoa Palms. So that's where it began, imagining the shooting of that film, and inspired by the lushness of Hawaii, the fragrances, the smells, the sights that make far north Queensland look arid.
Fabulous. Luca, can you play this for us now, please?
Hello, my name's Kathleen, and this is my poem Blue Hawaii 2. Elvis returns to Blue Hawaii, frangipani scent lingering. How the Hawaiian girls greeted him with petals on his pillow, a lei and shell necklace placed tenderly around his neck. Platters of pineapple, guava, papaya and mango. He ate bountifully, juice dribbling down his chest, drank milk from coconuts cracked open for him. How they swayed in hula to the sound of waves. He hears the ocean and their voices singing aloha, drums beating on sand as Elvis remembers singing Love Me Tender. There's something out of place. No fans waiting at the hotel, no crew ready to shoot, no cocktail bar at the pool. He walks through rooms no longer there. The sea has washed away walls. He slips between dilapidated wooden beams, looks out to the beach. No surfing today. Ethereal Elvis moves in time, light as early evening breezes, still cooling the back of his neck. Dark clouds swirling down green volcanic mountains, rain sings in valleys, wet sugarcane. Elvis tastes sugar, red, pink and yellow hibiscus falling off trees. Aloha everywhere, spirit of love, a greeting and farewell.
Isn't that a fabulous piece? Well done, Kathleen.
Peter.
Sends shivers down my spine every time I listen to it. It's this ghostly thing. So terrific. Well done, you. Yeah.
Cheers.
We're just going to continue then. So something that features a lot in your writing is art, right? But be it visual or music or performance. Getting back to that idea of accessibility, because sometimes art can just be very difficult for some people. You know, you look at a painting and you go, I have no idea what that's about. But could you talk a bit about your responses to art and what you're intending with some of your writing?
Yeah, sure. There are many pieces in Toupie that are responses to art, also known as ekphrastic. Ekphrastic meaning writing in response to another art form, which is everything you've just said, Peter.
Yeah.
And it could also be responding to other literary forms of art or literature. So there are 9 pieces in Toupie.
Wow.
And responding to visual art, which includes photography, paintings, films, also songs. So I find art's a very rich source of inspiration. My late partner Pling was a photographer, so visual art has been very much part of my life, and I have a degree in creative arts. I think as a writer, you can, as a human, you can respond to art in really any way you like, and it doesn't need to be, coming back to accessibility, it doesn't need to be conceptual, theoretical, philosophical. All of those are valid. It can be a sensory response, an emotional response, can be a personal narrative resonating with an experience that you've had. It doesn't have to be, again, absolutely understanding the whole work, but taking something of it. It could be as simple as a fragment.
Yeah.
It's like using a prompt in a piece of writing, which may take you in a different direction to how you would have otherwise written. And it's also that awareness of using all your senses in writing. So using your visual senses, your kinesthetic senses, as well as your heart and your head.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, and I guess sort of it's also saying that you don't need to have degrees in fine art to find ways into...
Just like you don't need a degree in English literature to read a short story or a poem and appreciate it in some way.
Yeah.
And underline some way.
Yeah. Fabulous. Okay, all right. So we're going to hear a second recording now, which is exciting. And this piece is called Blue Grotto, right? And it's a lovely piece which takes us for a swim into the dreamscape of Malta. Right. Can you tell us a little bit about how this came about, please?
Well, indeed, the dreamscape. I had my early childhood in Malta, and it really embedded itself in my psyche. Recurring dreams through my adolescence and early adulthood of a sea cave, of going through a sea cave in a rowboat, slightly scary and very looming, which you'll hear in the poem. I didn't know absolutely where this dream came from, and I had a conversation with Amelia, my mum, described it to her, and she said very quickly, "That's the Blue Grotto of Malta. We took you there when you were 3.
Yeah, wow.
When I was much older, in 2017, Pling and I visited Malta way after Blue Grotto was written. Blue Grotto was written and first published in the late 90s. But now when I read Blue Grotto, it's infused with that profound sensory, otherworldly experience, which I'll just quote myself from another piece in Toupie. In fact, the last piece, Pellies, which references the Blue Grotto. The Blue Grotto is more enchanting than I recalled or imagined, azure from another world.
Very nice, very nice. Could we now hear Blue Grotto? We've got a recording of that.
See a little wooden rowboat on still grey blue water. Stand on a bridge, take a photo through this frame. Later, look through the dark sea tunnel. Remember the Blue Grotto? The rowboat? So dark in this cave, rocks sharp black, looming in on all sides. The water becomes darker blue, blue-black. You can't see the bottom. The water becomes rougher, white laps against the boat, hollow sound against wood. Rowing through the Blue Grotto, each time it's the same place, where the boat rocks from side to side. You can't move through, see beyond the grotto. Dream this dream at 6. Dream blue at 9, 19. Wake with rocking beneath you. Hear water lapping against wood. In a Turkish restaurant with walls draped in burgundy, You tell your mother of dark blue cave. Still dream this sea dream in your 20s. Where does the cave come from? When you were 3, she says, we took you there. The blue grotto of Malta.
Fabulous poem. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a joy that is, that kind of, it just takes you there. You don't actually need to travel. You can just read poetry and stay at home. That's what I think. That's my plans anyway. Yeah, indeed. Look, we're going to talk a bit about travel now, right? Before we come to your last piece that you're going to read for us. But like we're always moving somewhere. It seems like I'm always driving somewhere, or we're on a train or an airplane going to an airport, or in this case, we're driving to Canberra. So the piece you're going to read for us is called Spanner. And this piece was written some time ago. It's an older piece, is it? Is that right? Yep.
Spanner could be the oldest piece in Toupie.
Oh.
It's definitely one of the oldest pieces.
My goodness.
Published in an anthology called Wirrawah/Lake George, There Is No Mystery. Yeah. And then republished in the second book, Jumping Out of Cars, first collaboration with Pling and Andrea Gawthorne, and revisited, revised with yourself and other writing colleagues in a Monday morning workshop group.
Yeah, fabulous. All right, take us to Spanner then.
Driving back from a weekend in Canberra, passing Wirrawah, poplars have become skeletal. Rollers rattling around in the wind, pulling to one side. Stop at Marulan Servo, fill up, try to start the engine. It doesn't take. Have you got a hammer so I can give the starter motor a bang? Man at the counter hands me a spanner, lacking the weight of a hammer. Few truckies stand round flicking through porn. Check out the tits, but what an ass. I ask them, can you help push start the car? One grins, another shuffles to the roller, gut wobbling over his stubbies. Third and fourth blokes walk behind me. Check it out, nice ass. Pull my coat across my chest. Won't go, love. I'll have to call the NRMA. If they can't get you going, they'll put you up for the night. Bloke 3 joins in. Come on, try it in third. They're running downhill. Glance in the rear view. The fattest one is almost tripping over his boots. The engine starts turning. I'm away on the freeway. The spanner beside me.
For the younger people, you probably just need to explain what stubbies are.
They're very unattractive shorts.
Shorts, that's right. Yeah.
They are tight and ill-fitting.
Ill-fitting usually, yeah, and they're kind of elastic, aren't they?
They are elastic.
They often sag a bit, or indeed.
And they feature in a couple of micro stories in Toupie.
Yeah.
Spanner and Lemonade, the one that is the parallel new version, set in Tasmania, not the road to Canberra.
So, look, Kathleen, that was a lovely reading, and thank you so much for that.
Absolute pleasure.
So we're nearly out of time, and so we're not quite out of time. I'm going to sort of suggest we go to the chat and see if there's some questions from the audience. But before we do that, I've got to ask you the title. Tell us about Toupie. What's that about?
Well, Toupie is a French word, and I'm disinclined to give it all away because the story of the title, Toupie, is in the preface, and I'm hoping that listeners, audience out there, either already have a copy or they will buy a copy. But I'll just give everyone a little taste.
Oh, go on then.
It's a French word. It means spinning top / spinning toy. There's a lot of spinning in Toupie, in the pieces themselves, in the whole, in the cover, so exquisitely designed by Bettina. Thank you, Bettina. With an image from Pling of a spinning aerial dancer. So I'd like to leave it at that and suggest there is spinning in terms of change and continuity in the work itself, and some of the experiences in there of change, recalibration of life, and to quote Pling, colour, change and movement.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. But if you want the non-abridged version of What Does Toupie Mean, read the preface.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. There you go. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Thank you, Peter.
So, Luca, if I turn to you, can you help us find some questions from the audience for this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
We've got a few questions in already from the early birds, the first few people who bought tickets. They were able to ask first. We've got one here from Elizabeth Walton. So she's asked, could you talk to us about how you know when you have a collection, what stays in, what gets left out, and what was your what your organizing principle was around presenting Toupie?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, my friend and fellow writer here, Peter Frankis, Elizabeth, and thank you for your question, suggested after 6 collections and being over 50 that it was perhaps time for a best of. So that was the impetus to do a retrospective. I published the last 3 books were chapbooks, which are really definable, 20 pages. They have their own liberation in you only have 20 pages to work with, but they have their own constraints. As discussed, there's a lot of non-poetry in the collection, micro stories and bits of faction, and I started writing those in the late 90s and I've returned to those. So I was looking for an all-encompassing. And in terms of the organising principle, the theme, colour, change and movement, both in content and in terms of my own writing and publishing, came fairly early on, and it was the title which I came to later, but all the pieces that I chose have some element of colour, whether in the title, such as purple basil, red feather, blue grotto, blue Hawaii, pink marshmallow, pink shirt, etc. So there needed to be, not necessarily in the title, but in the content, some element of colour.
And how did you know that when you had enough in there? How did you know you had a collection there?
Well, ironically, being published with Spineless Wonders, thank you so much, Spineless Wonders, unlike a chapbook, it needed to have a spine.
Yeah.
So we're looking at over 100. So there's some actual pragmatic parameters that you're working with roughly 100 pages of text, and doing integrity to all 6 of those collections, which doesn't mean those collections have equal numbers of pieces. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Elizabeth, and thank you.
Luca, to you.
Amazing. So our next one here is from Kai Jensen. It's where do you want to go next with your poetry writing? So write poems in a similar style and topics of those you've already written, or try something new?
Hi Kai, thanks for your question. Where do I want to go in terms of my poetry? Well, I'd like to keep going in my poetry and in my prose, keep exploring the return to micro stories. I'm interested in hybrid forms, which I think is already evident. And there's a Japanese form called hybrid that some of my fellow writers, such as Peter, work with, which seem to be a potential perfect fit for KB writing, because travel, as discussed, is a strong element in the content of my work. And a haibun needs to have some sense of travel, and it is a hybrid of poetry and prose. So I'll be exploring the haibun and continuing to work with poetic forms that I find really enhance my voice, or my voice resonates with, and that is prose poetry. And I'll continue writing free verse, etc. So some sort of a new collection, but once again, it will have a variety of forms. And it will have a spine, I suspect, not a pocket, not a chapbook.
Not another chapbook.
Yeah.
Good.
Thanks, Kai.
Luca.
Amazing. So we've also got another one here from Kai. It's just which other poets do you admire and or have most influenced your style?
Oh,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, no, look, it's a great question. Yeah, there are many. One of them is Joanne Burns, who is and has been a mentor and one of the very generous endorsers of Toupie. One of the things which Joanne has really honed me in on is precision of language, that every word counts. A sense of humanity, but also a sense of play with language. So Joanne's been really, really influential.
Joanne's famous for non-punctuation as well, isn't she?
And the lowercase,
And the
which,
lowercase I, yes.
yeah, which I'm very
Big fan of.
I'm a big fan of. Yeah, Cassandra Atherton's great love of prose poetry is really inspirational for me too. And I know Cassandra's very keen for me to write more prose poetry.
Yeah.
Um,
So, do you want
yeah.
to just riff a little bit on prose poetry, just for
Yeah,
people who
yeah.
are not
So-
sure what prose
Yeah,
poetry
so
is?
prose poetry, as the name suggests, is a hybrid of prose and poetry. So the prose bit, and I'm not an expert, I've done a lot of it and I've read a lot of it, and I like
You've won prizes in prose poetry competitions.
I have.
So, yes.
Thank you. So one of the primary differences with prose poetry and free verse is lineation. So rather than deliberately breaking the lines run on across the page like they would if you were writing a piece of prose, be it fiction or non-fiction. It is a form of poetry. So prose poems use devices such as metaphor and imagery. Back to the prose bit, not always, but quite often there's a narrative, there's a story.
Yeah.
And some of the strongest prose poetry that I have read has got that sense of building, that something might seem fairly almost just every day telling a story, and then it builds and builds, not necessarily to a punchline, but perhaps to a surprise or an unexpected, or where it all comes together.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, good. Luca.
Yeah. So we've got another one here from Elena Herbert. So did you rewrite slash edit the older poems heavily, or was it just a light touch? Do the older poems take you back to the space in which you initially wrote them? And does this make it harder or easier to edit and rewrite elements of those poems?
Good question.
Great question. Thanks, Elena. Some were absolutely micro tweaks. They were small punctuation. In many cases, they were about consistency, and that's where working with Susan McCreary, who worked on proofreading and copy editing, came in, as looking at how I punctuated or not punctuated pieces. And as Peter mentioned, I'm fairly minimal in terms of my punctuation, but earlier on I think I was quite organic, and I might have used a variety of slashes and dashes and so on. So it was settling more on, am I using slashes or am I using space on the page? And yeah, I don't know whether it was harder. I think in some ways the older pieces were easier to edit, and particularly in terms of content and the personal narrative parts of this, longer time between writing those. And
So you were less engaged with them personally?
and just fun. I mean, there's a couple of micro stories in there, ginger and apricot roses, and there's small bits of lived experience, but most of them are made up. So it was just, they're fictions. Based on some skerrick of experience, and they're good fun.
Yeah. Lovely. Luca, it's how are we going for time? Are we okay for time?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as well, if anyone else has any other questions, definitely post it in chat. I did see as well, just before we had another question posted in the book by Graham. In the chat by Graham. Kathleen, are you ready for this one?
I'd be delighted. Hello, Graham, and thank you for tuning in. I'm keen to hear your question.
So here he's gone, I've been loving your book. What inspires word choice in a poem?
Good question.
What inspires word choice? Yeah, big question, good question. Expressing what it is that I'm keen to express, expressing it in a way that sounds like what I'd like to say, that isn't too trite or predictable, and not too pretentious. So in terms of sound, yeah, there's the sound, there's the rhythm, there's the look of the word on the page, how it fits with other words.
Kathleen, there's a poem of yours which has a whale in it. Can you maybe that's a good example of sort of, of how you surprise the reader.
Yeah. There's a poem in Toupie called Salvage, and essentially it's a story of two people sitting in a room with a grim diagnosis scenario. I was a couple of drafts into the poem Salvage. I was in a writing group with Linda Godfrey, who I mentioned has done a lot of editing on Toupie, and she was the facilitator of this group. And we had a prompt. It was an exercise where the facilitator threw in something random, and the phrase was, "in the belly of a blue whale." And I threw that in, and it became such an effective metaphor for the sense of enormity of the situation, the gravity, the enormity of the cancer, but that finding words beyond the everyday to express experiences, thoughts, ideas that are beyond the everyday.
Yes.
So the magnitude of the whale was ideal, but I might not have come up with that otherwise.
Yes. So it's a slightly surreal kind of image, isn't it?
It's a very surreal image.
So it takes you out of sort of that,
the realist.
The realist piece, yeah.
Yeah. And through that surreal image gives, I hope, the reader a greater sense of the real story, of the extraordinariness of the ordinary.
So when you buy the book, read Salvage. It's a wonderful piece.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Graham.
Awesome, amazing. So I actually did just want to shout out this one that Krishna put in chat. So this one isn't a question, but just an answer to the previous response, saying that the merging of all the different prose poetry, like micro-lit, is a starter, a main, and dessert all in one piece, which I just think is an incredible way. Yeah.
Love it, Krishna. There's a lot of culinary references and certainly plenty of sensory material in there. So I really like the starter, main, and dessert.
Dessert, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of taste, a lot of fragrance.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions in chat. We do, we're coming up on 8:30, but absolutely, if anyone else has anything else they'd like to say, or even from you two, Kathleen and Peter, before we wrap it up.
Other than I think it's a gorgeous book. Spineless Wonders have done a great job in actually producing the book, and the extending it to sort of, to this festival is just a fabulous idea, because it means that sort of, people from all over the place. I mean, we have folk, Kai's down on sort of, the far south coast, Alana's sort of on the mid-south coast. So, it's a great way of getting, a group of people together without having to sort of, drive for hours and hours. So well done, Spineless Wonders. I think it's a terrific model.
And I echo Peter in saying bravo to Chico and Luca and Ron and me and behind the scenes, and to all of you for really erudite, interesting, stimulating questions and interaction. And I'm so grateful to be published by Spineless Wonders and be part of such an interactive press. I really believe that reading and writing are a kind of conversation, and events like this are a way of facilitating such conversation. And it's a privilege to be able to write and to publish and to have people read and appreciate and be able to ask questions and chat about the work. So namaste.
Yeah, brilliant.
To all of you.
Amazing. And thank you so much as well, Kathleen and Peter, for joining us. Like, it's been incredible to hear, especially just your dialogue. Like, both of you have such a wonderful way of speaking about writing in this book. And it just, even though I've read it, it still makes me excited to read it again. So absolutely incredible. Yeah, so I guess thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight for this Writers on Writers. If you haven't already as well, make sure to grab your free tickets to our final event in the series featuring Eggshell by Olivia De Silva. The link should be in the chat now. Yep, just by Chico. But yeah, thanks again, everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and we'll see you at the next event.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.